Hello and welcome back to the channel, where today we're comparing both the Range Rover Sport versus the BMW X5. We have the M Sport F15 model against the Range Rover Sport L494, which is the HSE Dynamic, both of which introduced to the market in 2013 and of course both of which considered very luxurious SUVs. So today we'll take a look. So starting with what most people find very important is of course the looks. With the BMW sticking true to their aggressiveness. You've got some real sharp lines coming across the bonnet, these big kidney grills, lovely LED daytime running lights. This particular one's got the M Performance kit, which really gravitates it, shows that aggressive stance off. And then as you can see, the Range Rover just sits that slightly higher. It's a lot more sleek in my opinion. You've got real nice curvatures round, nothing too aggressive or sharp. You don't have the big kidney grills. It's all very minimalistic, so to speak. And then continuing around to the rear of the BMW X5, you've got these big LED rear tail lamps with their signature style on that one there. It kind of conforms with the aggressive stance that it's really going for. You've got real nice wide arches. This, again, with the M Performance kit, looks that slightly bit more aggressive. Everything's quite low down. It's easily accessible. You do have the split tailgate on this one here as well. Top one being electronically operated, and the one just down there. So it gives a good load space, which of course is very important with an SUV. And as you can see, the Range Rover does stand a little bit taller at the rear too, which it does continue with the curved bumpers all around. Nothing's too aggressive, nothing's too sharp. You do, of course, with the Range Rover, again, get the electronic tailgate. It's not a split tailgate on this one here. Very similar type of boot space as you would expect with an SUV, but it is that little bit taller on this one. With the M Sport pack, you do get different bumpers on the M Sport than you do with the other specifications. This particular one also has the 20-inch diamond cut alloy wheels, which set the car off nicely. Rear privacy glass, there's no chrome anywhere. With the HSE Dynamic pack, it's all black lettering, black headlight surrounds, black trim all through, including the rear side grills, and of course big 22-inch alloy wheels, which is again really quite nice. So moving on to the BMW X5 cockpit, this particular one has the brushed aluminium trim with the black Dakota leather seats, which do have the electric memory function and also the heated seat function. That comes as standard as part of the BMW X5 M Sport. You get a beautiful M Sport steering wheel too. It's one of my favourite steering wheels across the market really. Just feels nice, it's the right size, it's not too clustered. You get nice paddle shift controls behind, of course, if you get the automatic gearbox. You do also get some nice features such as the ambient lighting. You can actually change the colour between the tiers. You've got a top tier, a middle tier and a lower tier, and through the iDrive system you can change that. Moving on to the iDrive system, it's brilliant. I think it's really got it together. This is the facelifted 2017 model BMW X5, which does have the nicer LED screen on there. It is touch sensitive. I personally don't like the touch sensitive side of it, but the iDrive controls down here, really a sharp image. Everything's intuitive, really quite quick to navigate your way around it as well. The 8-speed gearbox, again, really simple to use. Dual climate control, everything makes sense. Everything is where you'd expect it to be, which is a very Germanic experience. In the rear of the BMW X5, I've got plenty of space. I mean, I'm not the tallest person, I know I'm not, I'm standing at 5'9", but this is where I would ordinarily have it as a driving position. I've got oodles of room in terms of leg space. The nice feature again is that ambient lighting coming all the way through to the back with the brushed aluminium trim. They're comfortable seats all through. I'd say the middle seat is probably its letdown in the sense of you couldn't necessarily fit 3 adults in the back for a comfortable journey. But you do get the Isofix fittings, which are really good for child seats, of course. You still get quite a nice view throughout the seats and the privacy glass. The only thing I would say, it is quite dark in the back. I mean, this one doesn't have a panoramic sunroof, which you can get, which would of course allow more light in, but without that it does feel a little bit dark. So moving on to the cockpit of the Range Rover Sport, the L494, I've got to confess, I do think it's the better cockpit in my personal opinion. I think everything, you're a little bit more enclosed, everything's more embedded into the dash, the screen sits within, you've got a really nice digital display. You've also got these really cool armrests, which I do prefer to have on a seat. Again, you get these nice sport seats, they're electric memory heated function, very much like what the BMW has. This This is a perforated leather, which I quite prefer. The steering wheel, albeit I prefer the BMW steering wheel, this certainly isn't too bad. It's still, again, very intuitive to use. This particular one's heated. You've got the paddle shift controls again. The climate control just seems that little bit more minimalistic, nice and sleek. The screen, perhaps not as intuitive or as quick as what the BMW is, but certainly still very usable. I'd sacrifice that side of things to have this layout. I think the layout really does win for me. It doesn't feel quite so dark in here. The ambient lighting's a nice touch again, not quite as prominent what the BMW has, because obviously the BMW runs through the doors. This one tends to be more around the cockpit or the center console. But yeah, I think just a nicer place to be is my personal opinion. So moving into the back of the Range Rover Sport, not quite as much leg room, certainly ample. Again, this is in the seating position, and I know that I'm not the tallest bloke. Not quite as much headroom either. You do sit slightly taller in this particular one. You don't necessarily get the features of the ambient lighting running through, but again, it does feel that bit lighter because you've got lighter headlining and you've got the lighter door cards. The only thing it does have in this particular one, and it comes as standard as part of the HSE dynamic package, is you get the rear heated seats, which is a really nice feature to have on those longer journeys. The centre seat, very much like the BMW X5, I wouldn't necessarily want to be sat with 3 adults in the back for a long journey. It's not that it's uncomfortable, but it is all a bit tight. I would say that probably the rear seating area of the BMW X5 is probably a bit better than what the Range Rover is. Again, personal opinion. And of course, we need to compare the driving capability of these two cars as well. You're joining me in the BMW X5. This particular one is the 30D, which is a 3-litre straight-six turbo diesel producing 258 brake horsepower. That's paired with this 8-speed ZF gearbox. Very impressive setup in my mind. That 258 brake, yes, there are many SUVs out there that produce more, even the X5 40D, which is the same engine rammed up on the power. But to be honest with you, I don't think it necessarily needs it in this particular setup. It's really sharp, it's really responsive. There's not much of a body roll, which you kind of anticipate from an SUV. I think that's more so the M Sport, because it does have that slightly stiffer suspension with the dampers and bits and pieces as well. But a very direct drive. You can point it and it will go there. There's not much of an understeer. And of course, that does compromise the comfort a little bit, only in the sense of if you're going down country roads like I do most days, you feel every bump, you feel every pothole, you may even be able to feel it or hear it throughout the video. It's very firm. I wouldn't say it was too uncomfortable. It's not unlivable, but you do definitely feel these bumps in the road. And it depends where you live. If you have a lot of these uncomfortable roads, then maybe it's not the best option. As I say, it's definitely not unlivable. It's very capable, and it does give a better performance in terms of cornering and things like that. But as an SUV, you're not exactly participating in street races, so it depends what you want from a car. Mightily impressive with the response though. The engine, as I say, very quick. It feels really quite quick when you put your foot down too. When you put it into sport mode, it makes the difference, which a lot of manufacturers, it doesn't necessarily do much. But it is a nice and responsive drive, and you could definitely do a huge amount of motorway miles. If you're on a nice smooth road, it's really quite comfortable. You've got all the space around you. As I say, everything's intuitive. It's where you'd want it to be. So yeah, mightily impressed. I would just say that the ride is that little bit firmer, and you do fit that little bit lower down as well, but it does give you good cornering capabilities. Cool. I mean, that is properly quick for what this car is. Yeah, properly quick. I like that a lot. So it's a different filming day today. I've now got a hat on, and I've got pretty bad hat hair, so the hat's staying. But we're now in the Range Rover Sport, the L494. So this particular one is the 3-litre SDV6, producing 292 brake horsepower, which, if you remember, is significantly more than what the BMW X5 has. The honest truth is, you don't really feel it. You don't feel that much more of a punch. You don't feel that much quicker. And the M Sport setup is very, very good. It's very responsive. That's not to say that this is slow by any means. It still packs a punch. You do get a little bit more body roll as you go through the corners, but of course the compromise being that you don't feel every pothole. And it all comes down to a personal preference as to what kind of driving you would like to do. You do, however, have an ACE suspension system within the Range Rover lineup, and what that is an adaptive suspension system. So with this little dial down here, I can rotate that round to the left. It puts it into what we call a dynamic mode. That does stiffen everything up, and that does mean that if I dig it into a corner, I'm not going to quite get so much of the understeer side of things, and I'm certainly going to feel more of the potholes. So I think the utility side of things is brilliant in the sense of if I have it just in the normal mode, I still get monstrous amounts of torque, I still get a great amount of power, and I do get a bit more of a comfortable drive. Of course, with the ACE system and the air suspension system as a whole, Range Rovers, if you look on any forum or anything like that, you can run into trouble. It's another maintenance item. It's one of those things where if you look after it, it will look after you, in my personal opinion. That's not to say they're bulletproof, and it's not to say they never go wrong, but it's a system that I quite enjoy having on the car. I think it does give a very good drive. I think you still get the sporty feel, but at the end of the day, we are in a 4x4, we are in an SUV, so you don't want to feel too sporty. You don't want to feel every bump on the road all of the time. In terms of the gearbox, this one again is an 8-speed gearbox, the same as what the BMW offers, and I truly believe that 8-speed automatics, as it stands at the moment, are some of the best gearboxes out there. You don't get any kind of hesitancy when you're coming towards a hill. It knows what gear it needs to be in. Sometimes I find with these higher number in the gearboxes, it can sometimes be a little bit confused as to what gear it actually would like. This one, I think it's brilliant. You still get the paddle shift controls, which are good fun. Everything is still within reach, it's still quite easy to use. The BMW system with the screen is still very, very good, but this one certainly isn't too bad. It's probably my preference of drive, but again, it all comes down to a personal preference, and it all comes down to what people want to spend in terms of maintenance as well. The engine, really quite smooth. This is the V6 rather than the straight 6, but you still get that same 3-litre capacity across the two. I think it really does come down to a personal preference, but I'm really quite pleased to be in this Range Rover. Everything, as I say, is just that little bit lighter. It has certainly more of a softer and more luxurious feel to it, and yeah, it would be my choice if I'm completely on it. Now again, that is a really quite a quick punch. The only thing I would say is you do feel like you're floating a little bit more than what the BMW X5 did. So the X5 is certainly more sporty feeling than what the Sport is, albeit obviously a Sport. But yeah, and it's still properly quick, that car. Certainly nothing to complain about. So that is my comparison video between what is frankly two great SUVs, the BMW X5 F15 model and of course the Range Rover Sport L494 HSE Dynamic. My personal preference would be the Range Rover. I think it gives you a lot more kind of utility type vibes, which really suits to where I live. And also in comparison to the X5, I think it's just got that bit of a softer ride, a bit more of a luxurious feel, but I certainly wouldn't turn my nose up at a BMW. It really is come down to a personal preference. I really do appreciate you watching the video, and I really do hope that you enjoyed it. Please do let me know which one you would choose, which one you would prefer out of both the BMW and also the Range Rover. And please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. It really does mean a lot. And leave any questions or comments just below. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.